By the way, if my hands look a weird color, I tried to dye my hair green last night. I was very unsuccessful, but my hands do look like I strangled a Smurf. Hey team, how are you guys doing? I'm recording this on a Sunday morning. I've got my coffee. Um, so I hope you all are well, and continuing on the theme of debunking and going through some different apologetics of young earth creationism for radiometric dating. Today we're going to move on to Genesis Apologetics. That's the one. And I found, here we go, Genesis Apologetics talking about carbon-14 dating. I know I'm signed out of my YouTube account, Chrome. I'm in incognito mode right now. So you guys can't see my search history. Anywho, so we talked about carbon-14 in my last young earth creationism debunking video. So hopefully maybe they've got some new arguments. But we went through what carbon-14 dating is in the last video. And let's just see what they've got to say. What do you guys think? Let's see.
Carbon-14 dating reliably show that certain fossils or artifacts date tens of thousands of years ago.
Quick note, you wouldn't use carbon-14 dating to date a fossil, because a fossil specifically has had that all its organic material has been replaced with rock, right? Fossils are rocks, not organic material. So unless yeah, no, that's not what you use carbon-14 dating for. Remember, you use it for specifically organic material, and it's only reliable back to 60-ish thousand years, maybe possibly with like most modern techniques up to back to 100,000 years. But that's because the half-life of that carbon-14 to nitrogen-14 beta minus decay is about 6,000 years, and we can only reliably measure half-lives to about to 10. Otherwise, there's just so little left that we can't measure it anymore. So let's see what they've got to say.
Far outside of biblical history that points to a miraculous creation just thousands of years ago? Well, let's start out by saying that the actual process of carbon-14 dating includes sound science and uses high-tech lab equipment that costs millions. So the method itself is not the issue. It's the assumptions that are made when the raw isotope ratio gets converted to calendar years that carbon dating becomes unreliable and inaccurate.
All of these different organizations so harp on this idea of assumptions. They make bad assumptions, and they we've gone through them, guys. Like, they're not, the assumptions that are made aren't bad. It's just a reminder. Well, let's see what they say the assumptions are and see if they're lying or not, because that's a fun game to see.
Especially when dating really old items. Just what are the assumptions that are being made when interpreting carbon-14 test results? Actually, there's quite a few. Let's look quickly at just 8 of them. Forest fires.
Oh my goodness. Okay. What in the world? Forest fires?
Which pump a huge amount of carbon into the atmosphere. Atomic activity and releases, which even...
Oh wait, hold on. Soils from severely burned plots were depleted in carbon-14 compared to soils from unburned plots. Okay. Yeah, so this is true, right? That there are scenarios in which using carbon-14 dating would be inappropriate. The same reason that like you can't just date any old rock with uranium lead dating, right? You have to very intentionally choose which mineral you're going to look at. And so I think what either let's be generous, right? Let's be generous and say that the misconception here is that you can just willy-nilly date any organic material, anything with carbon in it, and expect to get an accurate date. And we know that there are instances where carbon-14 dating isn't going to give an accurate answer because of things, right? Because we know that there was, say, excess carbon-14 put into this thing we're interested in, or whatever have you. Okay.
Which pump a huge amount of carbon into the atmosphere. atomic activity and releases, which even doubled the amount of carbon-14 in the atmosphere.
Yes, this is true. So remember that the reaction that produces carbon-14 has to do with nitrogen interacting. It's produced by cosmic rays, right? We'll just simplify it and say produced by cosmic rays. Cosmic rays, just high energy photons. So if you blew up a nuclear weapon in the atmosphere, that's going to produce high energy photons. That's going to make the thing that can cause carbon-14 to be produced in the atmosphere. This is why we do not assume that carbon-14 has been produced at a constant rate throughout all of history. We use a calibration curve to know how much carbon something should be, and also note that, like, yeah, the effects from no one's using carbon-14 to date something from 1960. That seems silly. Like, not even one half-life has passed. You need some time to have passed for these radioactive materials to decay, right? So we're not trying to measure something from 1960, and surely answers in Genesis, excuse me, that's not the thing we're looking at today. Surely Genesis apologetics. Surely you are not suggesting that atomic weapons were detonated uh, in Rome, right? In the time of the Roman Empire. That's not what you're suggesting here, right? Because that's the only way that, like, this would be a good argument. It's like, well, we don't know if ancient peoples had nuclear weapons. Maybe they did. Maybe they were blowing those up in the atmosphere as tests, and that messed with the dates. Seriously, like, dude, dude, that's not. So there's a thing that we know about that we can account for in our calibration curve um, for initial concentrations of carbon-14 that happened very specifically in the 60s. We know of every instance on planet Earth of which a nuclear weapon has been detonated, right? That's not, those aren't exactly secret. Anyway, okay, what else? What are the other assumptions we're going to talk about?
Volcanic eruptions that blow carbon even hundreds of miles around the eruption, industrialization where factories produce carbon, solar flares, carbon reservoirs, changes in atmospheric pressure
Wow, okay, hold on. What's our little seal friend here?
produce carbon, solar flares, carbon reservoirs.
Fresh seal, carbon dated 1300 years old. Fresh. That's a problem, guys. Um, you don't get accurate dates with, so okay, you're not going to get an accurate date for something that's supposed to be like this is a tool we use to measure things that are thousands to tens of thousands of years old, not to measure something that is 5 years old, right? That's not what we do. So team, like, one, I think there are, like, yeah, carbon sinks is a thing. So there's like sometimes sea creatures, right, get excess carbon-14 specifically. So, like, if you try to date something that you know is super young, this is the wrong tool. And by super young, I mean like 100 years, maybe a couple hundred years, right? This is the wrong tool to use for that. This is the wrong stopwatch. So if you inappropriately use a tool, don't be surprised when you get bad answers, right? If your shelf building project called for a screwdriver and you used a hammer instead, don't be surprised when your shelf falls apart, right? That's all this is. And yes, there are many things which cause variable production of carbon-14 in the atmosphere. And those are generally accounted for with our calibration curve.
Reservoirs, changes in atmospheric pressures.
Changes in atmospheric pressure. How would that? I don't know how that's going to affect carbon-14 production. I really don't. I really don't know how that's going to affect carbon-14 production. Atmospheric pressure also changes all the time. That's a thing, right? That's how weather works.
And variances in the Earth's magnetic field. Just like other types
By the way, fun fact. If they're going to throw out that variances in Earth's magnetic field, let's Google a thing, guys. Let's do how frequently does Earth's magnetic, I can spell, field switch? Switch polarity, like the solution in every sci-fi movie. Okay, geomagnetic reversal. Look, it's on Wikipedia, guys. This is so well known. It's on Wikipedia. Yeah, so it takes between 1,000 and 10,000 years for it to actually switch. Some estimates as quick as a human lifetime. This is hard to say. Paleomagnetism, which is the field that studies Earth's historical magnetic field, is tricky. But what I want to look at is the rate of reversals Earth's magnetic field. Varies wildly over time. Cool. 72 million years ago, the field reversed 5 times in a million years. In a 4 million, but in this 4 million year period, there were 10 reversals. 2 reversals occurred during a span of 50,000 years. Okay, very cool. So we're looking for about 183. So one of the ways that you study this, you study the reversals of the Earth's magnetic field is actually in ocean seafloor crust, right? So where you have 2 ocean plates splitting apart like this, right? Plate tectonics. They very slowly move apart, and as they move apart, new crust is formed by magma coming up and solidifying on the seafloor. So oceanic crust, seafloor crust is a lot easier to make than continental crust for reasons. Continental crust is it's a slower process, and it's a more complicated process. That's why we get more complicated rocks in continental crust, but that's probably a topic for another day. But you get this very slow seafloor spreading, and this rock that's forming is has a decently high iron concentration, other magnetic materials. So when this rock comes up and solidifies, the magnetic things in that rock are going to align. The magnetic field of the rock aligns along the Earth's magnetic field. So if you go down and you look at the ocean floor, you'll see bands of rock where they're magnetized, right? The direction of their magnetic field is pointing north, then pointing south, then pointing north, then pointing south. And you can trace that all across the ocean floor. So you can trace out these magnetic field reversals. And so I think currently we're seeing, we are seeing them switch. How fast are we seeing them switch? There we go. Oof, in my last video, I was way off, about once every 450,000 years. Cool. For 450,000 years. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I was thinking I was thinking an order of magnitude off in my last video. Sorry, team. So order of magnitude 100,000 years. So my point of this is that talking about the strength of the magnetic field and leaning into those processes, talking about changes in Earth's magnetic field, you're talking about processes that happen over one reversal, right? Is 100 times longer than their claimed time span of the age of the Earth. So that's not a very good look for you, Genesis Apologetics, to lean into our magnetic field reversals. Goodness gracious, guys, my nose is so itchy. So I don't want to just rub it on camera because that doesn't look very good, but it's so itchy. Okay, let's look at this.
Types of radiometric dating. Translating carbon-14 test results into calendar years requires assuming a uniform decay rate of the isotopes involved.
And we've talked about this in every single video, that if you can change the decay rate of any radioactive material, please collect your Nobel Prize, right? Because no one else has ever been able to do that, my guy.
When scientists attempt to stretch the results of carbon dating back many thousands of years, are any of these assumptions being violated?
I don't. Sorry, they just listed things that are true earlier. They didn't actually list assumptions, right? So they just listed atomic weapons have been detonated in the atmosphere. That's factual. That's not like an assumption. Um, that like industrialization has increased carbon output, right? Um, but increasing oh my gosh, guys. Okay. So I don't like those weren't they didn't actually list any assumptions, right? They just listed things that are true. I don't I don't know. I don't know what you're saying. I'm so
Do we
confused.
know about all the forest fires and volcanic eruptions that have occurred in the distant past? Atomic activity, solar flares,
Guys, they actually just claimed. They actually just claimed that. I think they just claimed that the Romans invented nuclear weapons. I think that's what they just claimed. Um, we don't know if somebody in the past had a nuclear weapon and blew it up in the atmosphere several thousand years ago. We just don't know. Um, guys, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, this is so silly. And again, we do not assume, scientists do not assume that carbon 14 has been produced at a constant rate. We know it's been variable, and we account for it with the calibration curve.
and cycles, the Earth's magnetic field? Certainly not. We run out of clearly documented historical events that validate these assumptions after just a couple thousand years, and scientists already try to account for the violations of these assumptions that we happen to know about. So, if we know that these assumptions have been violated in our known
Again, they're just saying assumptions that they're like. I think that the assumption that they're trying to refer to is the assumption of constant production rate of carbon 14, and then these are all things that cause a non-constant production rate of carbon 14. Um, and by the way, it's not that like when they say like we run out of I don't know historical records, like do they mean like people writing them down? Because like because that's not how we look for carbon stuff, right? Like we look for uh oh my gosh, sorry, brain, I need to drink more of my coffee. You look for analogs, right? That are going to have like yeah, you look for analogs. So you can like backtrack how much carbon 14 they started with. That's how that works.
past of just a couple thousand years and have to account for them, how in the world can we say that there are no violations to these assumptions over the
Again, he's saying no violations to these assumptions, like, but like that's not without saying assumptions, right? That's really driving me nuts. Ugh. Let's look at the carbon 14 calibration curve, shall we? Mm. I think I pulled this up in the last video. Look, tree ring calibration. Obviously, that doesn't get you back to like what's the word, dendrochronology. That doesn't get you back to like 50,000 years ago, but it's one of the ways you look at things. Ooh, let's look at this Nature article, carbon dating the archaeological workhorse is getting a major reboot. Go, I'll accept your cookies, go away. Long anticipated recalibration of radiocarbon dating. Cool. Notice that shifting this calibration curve. So this is what science does, right? When we know better, we do better. We don't shy away from new information. We embrace it because we don't want to be wrong. We want to be less wrong together. So this is from last May. And notice shifting the ages of prehistoric samples hundreds of years, right? So if something is 30,000 years old, 30,000 years and 30,500 years is we want to be more accurate, but it's not like, oh, we don't know if this thing is 500 years old or 1,000 years old. It's not that, guys. It's anyway. Okay. Radiocarbon dating. Look, here we go. The work combined, so this is building that calibration curve, thousands of data points from tree rings, lake and ocean sediments, corals and stalagmites, along other features, and extends the time frame of radiocarbon dating back to 55,000 years ago. So I was even wrong. I thought we could use this for further back, but the calibration curve, we've only got back to 55,000 years ago. Oh my gosh, so many pop-ups. Stop it. Although the recalibration mostly results in subtle changes, even tiny tweaks can make a huge difference for archaeologists and paleoecologists aiming to pin events to a small window of time. So this is great, and this gives you a sense of tree rings are going to be useful back to a few hundred years. Corals and stalagmites, I think that's where you're going to get that back to that 55,000 years. So lots of people work really hard on this calibration curve, and Genesis Apologetics, like, if you have legitimate concerns or complaints about the calibration curve, about like, but how, like, but did we account for X? Like, you could do a literature review to look that up. Um, I'm assuming your organization is like makes enough money that you can afford some journal subscriptions, guys, or partner with a university library, things like that, to get access to all the journals so that you could do and present good science to your viewers, to your followers, instead of this, like, what you're saying here doesn't even make sense in English, guys. Like, this isn't even a good English like video, is let alone good science. Like this is just saying, but what if they don't take into account those things? And then I could be like, one quick Google search, look how we take account for those things. But are they going to say anything about that? Clearly not, which is what's so frustrating here, because this is why this is so frustrating to me, because this feels so incredibly dishonest. It really, really does, guys.
For the previous tens of thousands of years that aren't confirmed in written history.
See, they're looking for written history. Of course, we don't rely on humans writing things down, right? We look for analogs in nature, things that were there at the time that we can look to calibrate things and be better. That's the whole goal. Besides, like, if a monk 1,000 years ago wrote down that there was a forest fire in Eastern Europe, that doesn't actually tell me how much carbon is in the atmosphere. So that, like, written history isn't a reliable source for a carbon calibration curve.
Fortunately, there is a way to put carbon-14 dating to the validation test, where we can see how accurately it can date items of known ages. This is
Okay.
exactly what the British Science and Engineering Research Council did when they conducted an international blind study on carbon-14 dating by sending out artifacts of known ages to 38 of the world's leading carbon-14 testing laboratories. The results? Only 7 of the 38 laboratories produced dates that were even close to the known dates of the artifacts. That's only 18% of the laboratories in this international study. The rest, 82% of the laboratories, produced dates that were across the board, being off by even thousands of years. Given the short half-life,
I'm interested in what this paper is. Do we think they cite it? Oh, no, they don't cite it. So, one, I'm interested, when was this paper published? Um, modern, yeah. Oh, this is just a half-life table. This isn't even, this is like from a child's textbook. Um, I'm not saying that this paper didn't exist, but like, I'm concerned that they're potentially dishonestly representing the results. So I would like to read it. So let's see if we can't back up a little bit and parse out what this paper is and try to find it. Okay. Okay.
of
Hold on.
known ages.
This is, they're implying that it was published in Nature, right? Um,
This is exactly what the British Science and Engineering
British Science. Oh my gosh. Um, British Science and Engineering something.
Research Council did when
Oh, there we go. Science and Engineering Research Council, British Science and Engineering Research Council carbon 14 dating test. Let's see if that gives us oh good. This is from 1989. It looks like um Oh goodness. Okay. Uh, oh my gosh. I don't even want to. They're referencing something from before I was born, guys. Like, do you think science hasn't? Okay, I'm mad. Um, I'm a little mad, but let's look at this. Unexpected errors affect dating techniques. The margin of error with radiocarbon dating may be 2 to 3 times as great as people had claimed. Okay, well, let's back up because that's not the actual like article. I am a little interested in this article from 2018. Um, uh, okay. Uh, guys, I can't. If this is what they're referencing, yeah, yep, yeah, that's that 1989 article. They're referencing stuff from 1989. We're not even going to look into it. We're not even going to do that. Oh no, we are. I want to see how dishonest they're being. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sorry. I'm like, this is so cringe. I don't even want to look at it. You know, when you get, like, if you're watching a movie and you get embarrassed on behalf of the characters in the movie or the TV show and you have to like turn it off. That happens to me a lot. That is the like gut reaction that I'm experiencing right now. And it's very uncomfortable and I don't like it. Okay. Um, look, 250 years off. Look, I'm not going to be worried about a margin of error of 250 years if something is 50,000 years old, right? You've got to think about percents when we're dealing with large numbers. Okay. Um, okay. Yep, this is totally the thing. All 38 participants had to date a set of samples made from wood, peat, and carbonate. Um, The laboratories involved were on average 2 to 3 times less accurate than implied by the range of error they stated. I am interested in what I'm interested in how old these samples were, right? Because if they're not very old, right? If they're 5 years old, then this is a bad method to use. Uh, Oh, yeah. Baxter says that some of the accelerator laboratories were way out when dating samples as little as 200 years old. That's not a good, okay. So, okay, so let's see if there's anything else. Is there like um, is there, okay, is there a like actual paper impact? Maybe? Okay, let's check this out. I think we've got a real paper. This is from 1987, by the way. Ugh. Impact on archaeology of radiocarbon dating by accelerator mass spectroscopy and discussion. I'm sorry, in philosophical transactions. Oh, okay. Mathematical and physical science. Is this even a science journal? It, is it? Is it a science? I don't know. I'm so confused, guys. This seems this seems deeply cherry picked on Genesis Apologetics part. Um um oh, and this is laboratories that only been processing archaeological samples since 1982. Oh my gosh, new field. How accurate is it? Good questions to ask, but holy crap, guys, this is not this is this is this is 30 plus year old science, right? From at the time a new field, from at the time spectroscopy. I don't even know how long that had been around. Uh, and 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 oh my gosh, I'm trying to figure out the age of the samples they sent. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Yes, we know how radiocarbon dating works. Um, okay. Um, Building more in detail chronologically. In this paper, recent archaeological applications of the new technique are reviewed under those headings: verification, dating applied to the origin and spread of anatomically modern humans in Europe and the Americas, things like this. All right, we're not gonna get. I don't have access to this journal, so we can't read the actual thing. Wanted to. I really wanted to see how old the things they were sending it were, but um, this maybe possibly was a good critique in 1987. uh, but like it, I'm at a loss for words. Okay, let's let him talk. Let's fast forward back to where we were. Okay. So those labs had it right. These labs were wrong, but by I don't know by what by what error, you know what I mean? They definitely implied that they were all thousands of years off, but I don't know if that's true. And we don't know how old the samples were, so we don't know what a reasonable margin of error is. So they are leaving out a lot of information. Genesis Apologetics is here. So I'm a little upset with them. I'm a little upset. I'm very confused as well. Like my brain is melting because they're saying lots of dumb.
Across the board, being
Ugh.
off by even thousands of years. Given the short half-life of carbon-14, only 5,730 years, organic materials that are supposedly older than 100,000 years, which is about 18 half-lives, should contain absolutely no detectable carbon-14. However, coal.
Yes. So yes, that's true, unless that carbon-14 is replaced, which it can be if it's bombarded with high energy photons, which can happen when you're buried really deep in the ground.
Diamonds, and even dinosaur bones contain plenty of carbon-14. These coal samples carbon date to be between 40 and 60,000 years, but they are sandwiched between geological layers that
So we use this is again that we used carbon dating to try to date coal that we knew to be millions of years old. Carbon dating we don't use to date things that old, so we got weird dates because we used the wrong tool, right? That's all they're saying.
are supposedly 34 to 318 million years.
And if somebody in the audience is thinking like, but wait, doesn't this mean radiocarbon dating doesn't work? If like, aren't we assuming that it's only this old? No. This is why you can't use radiometric dating willy nilly. It matters what you're dating, right? It really does. Um, Processes that form coal reintroduce carbon 14. We know that, right? Processes that form diamonds reintroduce carbon 14. We know that. Um, so you can only use carbon 14 to date things where that have not gone through a process that reintroduces carbon 14. So you have to be careful about what you date, and you can't use it for anything and everything. Same thing with uranium lead dating. You cannot date any old rock with uranium lead dating. You need to look for things that are robust, that don't weather much. You need to look for things that wouldn't have had lead in them when they first started, when they first formed. So you saying that we inappropriately used a tool and got weird answers is again claiming that IKEA designed their shelves wrong when you used a hammer instead of a screwdriver and it didn't stay up, right? This is very much using misdirection to try to confuse people.
Old. So, which age are we supposed to believe? Maybe they are all wrong. In fact,
oh, these things we blatantly used a tool incorrectly and it contradicts each other. Therefore, we can't know anything.
These coal carbon-14 results show
Bleh.
that the plants that eventually became coal were uprooted at about the same time, demonstrating that the tectonic
No, 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 no. So here's what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that because you have some coal that's like 40 million years old and some coal that's 50 million years old, and they have about the same amount of radiocarbon in them, therefore they had to have formed at the same time. No, 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 because we're talking about there's a process that occurred to these cold beds that reintroduced carbon 14. All this means is that that process happened at about the same time, right? That process happened at about the same time to both of them, not that they formed at the same time. Like, you've got to know what you're doing and what you're talking about when we're talking about geology.
upheaval occurred during Noah's flood when the fountains of the Great Deep ruptured according to Genesis 7:11.
Oh, I could use, now I want to go to 7-Eleven and get snacks.
Carbon-14 is also found in diamonds, which supposedly take millions and millions of years to form. Diamond is the hardest naturally occurring substance known, so it should be very resistant to contamination. Yet,
It's very hard, yes, but what turns nitrogen 14 into carbon 14? Photons. Photons don't really care about hardness, right?
yet they are repeatedly found with measurable levels of carbon-14 in them. Carbon-14 is even repeatedly found in dinosaur bones.
Okay, this is obnoxious. They are very clear. I'm pointing at my screen with this pen. You can't see what I'm doing. This is obnoxious. And if I did what they're doing right now at at my university, I would get kicked out for like academic fraud. Do you see, or plagiarism? This is very clearly a paper, right? Because it's some volume 51, spring 2015 issue of this journal, whatever it is. But they're not going to tell me what journal they're looking at, right? They don't cite it anywhere. So this is academic fraud is what this is. So this is bad practices there. Genesis Apologetics. This would get you kicked out of university really fast.
Indicating that these animals were created on the sixth day of creation, just thousands of years ago.
What?
Between 1984 and 1998 alone, the scientific...
What? I don't... What? What did we just say? What words did we just say? Years. But these are... The years here are like 17,000 plus or minus 40, 20,000 plus or minus 90, 25,000 plus or minus 60. What? Okay, sorry. Once more with feeling here. What are you saying?
Indicating that these animals were created on the sixth day of creation.
Oh, shoot. Okay, they're saying that we found, I don't even know how you get that conclusion there, Genesis Apologetics. Like, they're saying that we found carbon-14 in fossils, basically in things that we shouldn't have found carbon-14 in. Therefore, and they're only off by 20,000 years between each other. So therefore, creationism, that's what we're going with here, team. This video really does not English well, I'm just saying.
Just thousands of years ago. Between 1980...
Just thousands of years ago, when the dates, gosh, I don't, guys, it's hurting my brain.
1984 and 1998 alone, the scientific literature reported carbon-14 in 70 samples that came from fossils, coal, oil, natural gas, and marble, representing the fossil-bearing portion of the geologic record.
Carbon, okay, we've talked about this. We talked about why these
supposedly spanning more than 500 million years, all containing radiocarbon that shouldn't be there if the Earth is really billions of years old. Does carbon-14 dating...
So what's really annoying to me here is that, like, when they're talking about uranium lead, it's like, but you don't know that more uranium didn't get thrown in there, that lead didn't get thrown in there, right? You don't know what happened. And here they're like, look, there's carbon-14 in it. Carbon-14 shouldn't be there. therefore it's got to be young, right? When I'm like, no, but we know that we know the processes that would produce carbon 14 in these samples. And we know that with uranium lead dating, that you're not going to make lead inside a zircon, right? You can make carbon 14, especially when you've got that nitrogen 14 trapped in there after it decayed. You can just spit that right back to carbon 14. You can do that. That's a thing. Goodness gracious, team.
Really provide a dependable way to build a worldview about the history of the Earth? Trusting in
Carbon 14 is not how we build a worldview at the history of the Earth. Carbon 14 is carbon 14 doesn't really care about your worldview, right? Carbon 14 is just how do we get absolute dates for organic material back to 55,000 years ago. That's all it does. That's the tool. That's what we can use that tool for.
carbon-14 dating, like any form of radiometric dating, requires faith. All
Does
forms
it?
of radiometric dating depend on a
I also find it so strange that these like, one, no, it doesn't. Two, why do you think that's bad? Like, I don't get why so many apologetics sites, and I've heard Kent Hovind does this all the time, where it's like, that's not science, that's a religion. And he has, in his voice, there's such disdain for religion, right? It's like, but you're a religious leader. I don't understand. I don't understand. Okay.
assumptions. Assumptions about the starting levels of the parent and daughter elements, the decay rate,
We don't assume that. We have a calibration curve for carbon 14 to understand it. The decay rate is a constant, and if you can prove otherwise, collect your Nobel Prize.
and the consistency of the environment where the item was located. These
Gosh, see, they just disproved their own point earlier. These are processes we know and understand, guys. These are things we know and understand.
assumptions can never be proven because we
Gosh.
can't go back in time to validate them.
But we can take carbon 14 and put it in the lab and put it under extremely high pressures and extremely high temperatures, or extremely cold temperatures and extremely low pressures, and we can put it under an extremely strong magnetic field. We can accelerate it close. Well, we might not be able to accelerate carbon close to the speed of light, but we can accelerate it real fast, right? We can take and see and measure that decay rate, right? We can do that. By the way, you can measure the decay constant. Isn't the exact same thing as the half-life. We often use half-lives because it just kind of makes sense. A decay constant is measured in like decays per second. So you don't have to wait a whole half-life to measure the decay constant. Anyhow, just so there's no confusion there. All right. All right. What else you got?
And wouldn't you rather trust the only one who was here when the Earth was formed?
We might be having a different conversation if like every individual human had a direct revelation from God that they could confirm was in fact from God. But like that's not what things are. Um, okay, I think that's where we're gonna leave it, team. You guys are cool, and I will see you again soon. Okay, all right, let's stop that share, and we'll do some more young Earth creationism debunking later. All right, bye, team.